Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for...
Summertime and politics are crazy! UnSpun.
Everybody, 4-point buckle. Buckle your seatbelts. This is George about to go on vacation, and we're talking all kinds of politics. Before we get deep into what you've walked the walk of in municipal politics, let's talk first about the big announcement this week, the flip to the flop to the flippy flop flop.
Flippy flop 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 flop. Yeah, the provincial government and their little fancy museum, their $1 billion boondoggle for the Royal BC Museum. They've surprisingly and predicted here on UnSpun, as we predicted, they have decided not to move forward with this nightmare PR crisis that they have faced the last several weeks because clearly it was a stupid idea. Not that having a great museum isn't a great idea, but oh my God, the process, the inability to connect with the people and talk about it, there was no process and it was just came out of nowhere. And
then when they released the plan, a third of it was redacted. What are you redacting? Who are you protecting here? How is that? This is
so bad.
This is shady. This is just, redacting documents about how you're spending. And I do like the fact, I have to say, I watched the press briefing and John Horgan did say, my bad, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Clearly, citizens in this province are thinking about other things. So we're going to indefinitely pause this. Unfortunately, though, George, there's still a massive price tag associated with this. Apparently, the warehouse is going to be $250 million to build the warehouse to house the things until a new, right? $250 million for a warehouse. And I get it. These are sensitive pieces and documents, and it's a woolly mammoth and all that. I get it. But in the time it'll take to build the $250 million warehouse, it's going to cost $11 million to rent a warehouse. Like, it's the numbers associated with everything to do here. Like, why not? And I'm just throwing it out here. This is my middle that I would write at the Orca. Hopefully the Orca comes back one day because I really need that outlet to write my columns at. Why not, for less money, create satellite museums throughout British Columbia that would repatriate much of the First Nations, Indigenous, Métis, and pieces of incredible art that each of those Indigenous arms would like to have back on their territories or close to it, or have some say in what happens or how it's presented. Like, there's a lot here that I think hopefully the public consultation that they promised the province, will involve some of these ways of doing things smarter. I think our dollars are being spent in a way that don't reflect the kitchen table of British Columbians right now.
Well, I think that, obviously the process there was no process. And, the best example we have is the Vancouver Art Gallery, who's been going through their process for many, many years. The provincial government, way back in Gordon Campbell's time, committed to $150 million to the city of Vancouver, to the Vancouver Museum, or to the Vancouver Art Gallery. And then it said, you need to figure out the rest of it. Whatever it is you want to do, go for it. Like, it's your problem, not ours. You got to go get private partners, donors, talk to the city of Vancouver, whatever. And in that process, and when I was in office, there was certainly a lot of discussion about this satellite concept that I think Bob Rennie was a big believer of that. He was one of their big supporters. I think he was on the board. I don't know. The technology.
I think the art gallery is different than the museum, for me anyway. I think those are apples and oranges, because there's a way of taking a little bit. I think there's a way of taking a little bit of the history of this part of the world and creating, because the museum, let's face it,
but you don't
Victoria was very much a science worldy kind of place. We're going to the Western town. We're going to go down to the rail station.
It's the same place it was when I was a kid. Hasn't changed.
But doesn't reflect the history the way Truth and Reconciliation must. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. Well, there's that whole issue, but I think that every city, town in this province has a museum. Generally, they would see that as a threat to a certain degree. But you could, in the future. I mean, I look at how my kid experiences things with 3D, goggles, all these things, the
Yeah.
technology that exists. If you were to build a new museum, whatever the cost, I think a private-public partnership would be better. The province will commit $300 million. You go find another 300 or $600 million, whatever, through whatever
Yeah.
business plan you can come up with. But here's
And
300
take a
million.
cut.
We're committing to it, and then they have to go out and do the job as a board of directors. That's your job.
Yeah.
However, it is a provincial museum, but Vancouver committed, I think, half as much to the city of Vancouver. So there are similarities. So I think that if you're talking about a traveling museum, I think it's old school to think about or remote sites. No, 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 no. You need to build a fantastic museum for sure in Victoria. It makes sense. But you need to make sure you build in infrastructure and technology that those small museums around the province could then potentially connect to it to have experiential programming that would drive traffic into their museums, which of course they need all the time. So if you
Yeah.
want to see the woolly mammoth myth, or you want to see truth and reconciliation stuff, or you want to go through an old town and you're in the cusp, or I don't know, we were somewhere else in the province, and hey, here's our Royal BC Museum section.
Right.
But it's basically
Step
put
into this booth
goggles.
and put on your
Yeah, yeah,
goggles. Yeah. I like
exactly.
it. I like it. I think that's a great idea. I do. I don't
I'm
think
sure
that
it's in
the
the business
building,
plan, but it's redacted.
yeah. And we can't see it. We're not allowed to see it. We're not grown
You
up
can't
enough,
see
George.
it.
We can't handle the truth. We
Anyway,
can't.
the biggest thing from a spin point of view is how this will damage the premier. Has this created long-term damage to his reputation? There was talk just a few months ago. He's untouchable. He's Teflon. Nobody else can lead this NDP into the next election. We were even talking about this, recently, about them calling an election earlier with him as leader so that they could win it. And then, clearly they don't care about timelines for elections. They'll just do it whenever they think they can win, which has gone back to the
Right.
old system. And so, a few months ago, they were probably thinking, hey, we could probably call an election in the spring of 2023, call an election with John Horgan as our leader. As soon as that's done, maybe 6 months later, he bounces. We get a new leader. That gives 4 years for that new leader to build up their reputation as the new next premier for the NDP. Now they've got this problem where he's tarnished, and 69% of British Columbians were like, boo to this museum idea. That's bad PR
That's
for
bad.
for the NDP and this leader. And flip-flopping is never good in politics. I don't care what Bill Tiemann says about it, because I saw him tweeting this today, separate to the stuff in the Vancouver we're going to talk about next. But, you're a flip-flopper. My God, the NDP lost an election previously to the Liberals because they flip-flopped on stuff with
Yeah.
the previous leader of that party. So it's, flip-flopping is really bad in politics. And apologizing is something oh my God, it's like Gregor Robertson pulled it off in his last election and managed to win. I think it was 2014? I forget which election it was. That was 2014, and he won
Yeah.
because he apologized. But apologizing in politics, it just doesn't. You really got to be desperate to apologize. It's something you don't want to do because it makes you look weak.
I know you've said this before, and I've always agreed with you. And well, actually, I've deferred to you because you have the experience in both politics and crisis communications. I feel, though, in the unspun universe that we're living in, I'm going to throw this out there. As a voter, there was a time where I'd be like, oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. You're apologizing for sure. All right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Like, I don't believe it. Now, after the era of politics and the dysfunctional politics that we've witnessed on a global scale, whether it's Boris Johnson or Donald Trump or
Right.
whomever, right? That sort of bombastic, I will never, ever cop to unless I get caught drinking wine at a against COVID rules party, like Bojo did. Like, he did kind of apologize for that because he sort of had to. But I feel that in this day and age of with all of that in mind, that it is so refreshing to hear somebody say, that was a mistake. That was a mistake. I'm going to change that. Not, I'm sorry I assaulted someone. That's not, I don't think Donald Trump will ever apologize for what he said on that bus with Billy, what's his nose from the
Mm-hmm.
entertainment show,
Bush.
or the people who have Billy Bush, thank you, or the right, or the the indiscretions that have been brought forward by other women in the United States. So there's a line to be drawn. But when
Mm-hmm.
you make a decision arbitrarily about spending taxpayers' dollars, and the blowback is as significant as the poll, as you said, 69% of people in the province, including myself, were like, "What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
And not being able to let go of it. It's just like, well, it's out of our hands, and I guess we're going to vote him out next time if he's going to spend money like this. That's where people started going. And when he steps up and goes, you know what, totally on me, my bad, didn't read the room, you're right, I got it, I heard you, whatever, doesn't smack as
I
what
don't know.
it did in the past. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
need to
it's
be right.
arrogance,
I
but
don't, it
it sees it has
maybe,
the problem is their decision to move forward is not only arrogant and out of touch. It's a sign from a that they're out of touch. That this will be the first of probably many things. It's really hard to rein in once you start being out of touch as a government. You're generally out of touch, and
yeah,
so. You will see, I am sure, and they'll never know when it's happening because, of course, they're out of touch.
they're in touch. Right. I
You'll
get
see
it. I
other
get it.
stuff that will snowball now because they clearly lost touch with the people of this province, and that arrogance, which we know is already there because of the way they've been behaving in other ways, pushing
Yeah.
stuff through, the way they've been treating the Green Party. The arrogance was already there.
Right.
Now they've proven that they're out of touch. That is the dismantling of a government, 100%. That's how they fall apart. And you've got now a caucus that are like, I don't know, this guy. Once your caucus starts to question your leadership and your management style, whoa, now you're really starting to slide. Now when they're in their communities talking to people, they're like, oh, yeah, it's hard for them to defend. Well, that wasn't me. That was John Horgan. Well, that's bad that they would say that. All this stuff just starts to snowball, and that's how governments fall. And
Which brings us to municipal politics.
oh God,
That was a
all
perfect
right,
segue, George. Perfect
yeah,
segue.
maybe,
So
yes.
over the last number, if you don't listen to this podcast religiously, what's wrong with you? No, I mean, you should be listening, but
Well, you're listening right now or
unspunpodcast.com,
watching, yeah. So thank
unspun
you.
podcast, unspunpodcast.com is where you find us. Sign up. It'll get delivered to your inbox. Programming note, 2-week hiatus because George is going away. He's going to
Mm-hmm.
Machu Picchu for
Yes,
the big trip. So great. But
being enlightened.
will reconvene 3 weeks from now. And what the political world will look like and what we'll need to unpack will really be something. Because last week, George-Affleck, we were talking about the crazy number of amendments coming down the pipe with the Broadway plan, and then I'm not going to bury the lead here. Last night in council, it passed, and we got to talk about just bring us back up to speed so that if there is a new listener or a new viewer right now that's like, I really don't know what the Broadway plan is. I don't even know if I agree with it or not because it's been so convoluted. Can you sort of
Yeah.
lay out what this future
Sure.
of Broadway looks like?
Yeah, I mean, and in some ways it doesn't matter because it's more of a political issue than it is an actual issue. it's a project. I mean, the Broadway plan is an area from basically east of very east side of Vancouver. Broadway's a giant road that goes through the city of Vancouver. If you don't know Vancouver, it's our main thoroughfare for our equipment and big trucks and ambulances and all sorts of different things. But
An
it's also our
artery.
second. It's
Yeah.
a big, huge artery. It's also in second biggest business district in the province. The second being our downtown core in Vancouver. Sorry, everybody else, but we have two of the biggest employment areas in the province. One is downtown. The second is Broadway. Most of those people are healthcare workers because our healthcare district is in that area. So a very crucial area. So what started this off was because we're going to get the SkyTrain built underground all the way along Broadway, at least to halfway along Broadway. So
Subway.
big deal. Yeah, subway underground. So the big question came up when I was on council. Hey, we need to make sure we think about the stuff that's above ground as we build this train system underground and have all these people popping out and the opportunity that provides for housing, for business, for all sorts of things. So in 2018, we said, okay, we laid the groundwork for a process. Next council came in, brand new council, almost 100% new people. They came up with a whole bunch of other. It took 3 years, 1 year too long. It took us into the final year of a term. They presented this giant, complicated massively larger than it should be plan for this area. Controversial because it's an election year, and this is the key part of this whole conversation today, is it became a political issue, not even a development issue. It certainly, all the issues became about what it was, but it was driven by political agendas now. That's because it's an election. Vancouver's very political. We have political parties. So this became not about the quality of this project, about everybody taking ownership for different parts of it, or using it as a tool to say, see, this is why City of Vancouver, this is why you need to vote for me, because this thing shows this is why this is all broken. And so it's just like a nightmare, because I actually didn't think it would get approved, because I thought the ABC, the new party overseen by Ken Sim, previous guy who ran for the mayor in Vancouver under NPA, would say to his team, like, don't vote for this. This is just a nightmare. But last night, it went to council, and Jody, it passed. It passed. And the reason was because this party, ABC, a better Vancouver, a better city of Vancouver, and the three councillors that were previously NPA voted in favor of it. Their arguments might be 100% accurate. They might be way understanding the meaning of this for the city of Vancouver. Absolutely. Probably is there's lots of great parts of this plan, but it is an election year. It's politics. And so I tweeted out last night, here is why this is bad, or what this means for each one of these people and their decisions last night. For a better city of Vancouver, it's gold for everybody else, because it basically feeds into the narrative that they're in the developers' pockets, that they don't care about listening to people, that they are already arrogant. They don't care about people. That is the argument that everybody will use against this new party, that they are just basically NPA. Interestingly, the only person from NPA, Melissa DeGenova, voted against it. So now the narrative that NPA can use, hey, we were listening, we voted against this, and we listened. But the problem is, two things happened in those two parties, from my point of view. Ken Sim, the leader of the ABC party, invisible. I don't even know where he stands on the issue. I have no idea. He has shown no leadership on this issue. He's completely hiding on it, doesn't talk about it at all. Left it in the hands of his three councillors, which is fine, but it doesn't show a lot of leadership on his part. I don't even know where he stands today. Has he tweeted it? I don't even know. Whereas with Melissa, it's a good decision politically. But where's John Cooper in this? He tweeted two things last night. In my mind, he should have held a press conference. He should have been at that meeting. He should have come outside. There was press there. There was probably a scrum. He should have been there saying, this is why you need to vote for me. This was an opportunity that he lost. And so that's what I tweeted out, which may say Melissa's going, hey, well, I voted against it. Yeah, but your leader didn't use it as an opportunity that he could have in the moment in time. You have to be quick in politics about these things. Then
Can I jump in there? Yes. Let me just jump in on that, because I think there's an important point here for those who aren't as nerdy about civic politics as we might be, and certainly you've lived it. Mm-hmm. Is if when Melissa DeGenova, when Councillor DeGenova says, yeah, but I didn't vote for it. Average Joe public is not paying attention that there's a direct line between Melissa DeGenova and John Cooper and the NPA.
She's not running for mayor.
Exactly. And there are really clear vacancies in messaging when it comes to candidates. Continue.
Yeah, then you have the mayor and one city who voted for it. This is not a surprise. They are very much in talking about rental and all this. Their narrative is rental apartments and the affordability, and so their narrative is about that. So, and they also have the unions behind it. So I think it's a bit of a wash for them. I don't think they'll be impacted in any way based on current data or whatever. What the opportunity, and then there's Jean Swanson, who voted against it because she votes against everything, and she's COPE. So, whatever. And then there is Team, which has only got one councillor on there, but she's the leader of this party, and Colleen Hardwick. We've talked about her before, and her dad was on this council way back in the 70s. This is, she's living his legacy. And, her argument, she is using and she's got Bill Tillman, who's NDP. You've got for NPA, which is a right-wing party in Vancouver, and now she's got a person who's a hardcore NDP on her team. She's got a very mixed bunch of people. She's going after that mushy middle in Vancouver, and that's the key to win in Vancouver. That mushy middle, that centrist, those federal NDPers, they're always floating around. They voted for Vision. They can vote for NPA if they like it. but but she's also going against the angry vote, which is a good one. So
Yeah.
her going against it, being clear about process. Bill Thielman's very good communicator. She's pretty good at communicating. She comes across as a bit angry, I think. So Bill will lighten that up. But I think it's about process. It's about, she took the opportunity. Look at any clips, any media stuff, you'll see she's the one being quoted. She's showing leadership on this. It's a huge win for her, and will continue her. I think she's got momentum. And I would say if a poll is done by Mario or anybody else in the next couple of weeks, you will see, I think, her moving into second place ahead of Ken Sim because of this. And because John Cooper, an MPA, didn't use it to the maximum effort because they voted against it. And Melissa she added, there was all these amendments and all these different things, and all these things were changed. And those are the arguments for the people who voted for it. We tweaked it and made it much better. And then, just like you said, people aren't paying attention to that. It's too complicated. That's too complicated. No. So
I'm barely paying attention to it, and I'm paid to.
Yeah, I know. Okay. And so you have, but basically it comes down to, it's an election year. What's the messaging going to be from your party and against you as a party? So now team is looking at, okay, we can now attack the mayor saying he doesn't listen because he voted for it, and so did one city. We can say ABC voted for it. They don't listen. They're not worried. I don't think they should be too worried at this point unless NPA figures out a way to really be more clear. And sorry, John, we're friends, but he's not doing. He's got to be more out there in the moment and be there and be the face of these things, as should Ken Sim. If you're going to be the leader of a party, you got to be the face of that party all the time in an election year. And I don't see that happening, except for, of course, the mayor, who sends out press releases from the city immediately following this. And
that latest press release was so very campaigny.
Yes, not even permitted. Shouldn't be permitted. It came on the City of Vancouver Press.
Yeah.
That's not even written by staff of the city, written by the mayor's office, put on City of Vancouver letterhead like it's a City of Vancouver announcement. And it wasn't. It's a mayor's office announcement. Previous to that, the mayor's office would always say the mayor's office. He doesn't even do that anymore. And I don't know why they're letting him get away with that, because it contravenes so many rules at the City of Vancouver. I can't believe they let him do it.
Who's the watchdog for stuff like that? Who's not doing their job in that regard? Well, who's supposed to hold accountable?
Media, I suppose. Yeah. Really, it's and the opposition, the people in that council chamber should be putting motion. There's simply, there's rules of order you have to follow. There's legal departments.
They're busy putting out motions about Cuba. We'll get into that in a second. The tweet that Kenneth Chan put out about TransLink's plan kind of ties into this to some degree. Because I'm trying to understand. Okay. So TransLink is saying that they're going into the development piece in order to...
they're creating a development arm to build buildings, basically. I always worry when government gets into building things because it usually costs too much money, i.e. Royal BC Museum, $1 billion. It's interesting timing. The story came out this morning. I'm not sure when the actual information got to Kenneth at Daily Hive, but this is because of the Broadway decision. The density at the stations is quite high, and this TransLink owns the property where the stations are located, and a couple of usually a little bit more land in and around that area, as does the City of Vancouver. And so, but I would imagine the developments they'll be doing won't be rental housing. It's going to be office buildings, and those are cash cows for anybody right now. The office space requirements in the city, like the need is huge. But they'll be going to the city to put this density there.
Can you explain that to me, when the office need is huge, when there's so much work from home and there's so much, overhead space that people have recognized over the last 2 years that they don't necessarily need their entire workforce in an expensive office downtown Vancouver in order to, have their official headquarters in Vancouver? That's okay. You're recovering from COVID. You're feeling better. I should have said that off the top. You're feeling better, right?
Yeah, I feel good.
Okay, but working from home and
I know, but you've got Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Disney, huge companies taking up a ton of office space downtown, tons and tons and tons of office space. They're taking over everything, so it's eating away at our space, and just there's a lot of people who want to be here, in Vancouver, so work here. There is, I was, Colleen Hardwick did an interview with Larry Beasley, and who was a former city planner. I would say watch it. I would have liked to see the unedited version. There's like a lot of, what was he? He was getting into something
Tight
there,
edit.
and then
Yeah.
suddenly it went,
The clip.
wonder what he was going to say. What was cut out? But he talked about office space and the fact that one of the things he made when he was the main planner of the city was, what do we replace the future of work in the city? And we talk about tech sector, but it's really about the new information industry, the world that we live in, and the work that's involved in that, and the fact you can work anywhere, even if your head office is wherever. That a lot of these companies are satellite companies like Microsoft and Amazon, but the people want to work for those companies in Vancouver because it's Vancouver, because the way it's built was built.
I get you.
Will be built?
I get you.
Question mark. Question mark.
Question mark. Question mark. Dot dot dot. Exclamation
Yes.
point. We all are dictating to our series in that way.
Yes.
I want to ask you a quick one, and I know we didn't go over this in our pre-show meeting, and but the amalgamation of the municipalities in order to create. What are your thoughts?
Well, we already have it. It's called Metro Vancouver. And we have a board of directors that's unelected, that's appointed by each city. They oversee a multi-billion. I think it's $2 billion budget. They do housing. It's basically Vancouver has four or five. I forget, 5 reps on there. The most representatives. Surrey, I think.
But in
second.
terms of like zoning and street cleaning and what's that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it would be amazing in some ways, but I can't imagine how complicated that would be. I think there are ways to make
I saw it in Toronto. I saw it happen in Ontario, and the GTA went from Metro Toronto to the Greater Toronto area, where it just was like, okay, everybody on the same page. So it didn't look like it does right now when you drive down, West Broadway, and all of a sudden you cross boundary, and you're like, I'm in another country. I'm on a different planet. Like Burnaby is very different from Vancouver. It's like North Van is very different from West Van. It's like Ladner is very different from Richmond. Ladner is very different from Tsawwassen, very different to Crescent Beach. Like are we coming ever closer to a scenario in a situation where we streamline governance?
You can't even get North Vancouver and North Vancouver to align, or Langley and Langley to get together. I mean, give me a break. I would say
but perhaps that's
unlikely,
because there's infighting. 1 second, but maybe there's infighting in territory of like, I don't want to lose my job because I do this for North Vancouver. It's like, well, I also do this for North Vancouver, and I don't think they need both of us. So why don't we look at who's doing the job better? Because our city hall in the city of Vancouver we have more than we need working in there, and they're not getting the job done.
Yeah, does anybody in Burnaby want Vancouver to run Burnaby?
No, I'd like Burnaby to run Vancouver. And we have a night mayor. We're going to have a night mayor, George. This just in.
Just a final point on that, though. On that other thing, I would say the province EB is kind of pushing. He's poking around on controlling public hearings and that stuff. That is a slippery slope towards the province. Certainly changing, and it's a possibility. It'd be a political challenge, but to say the province has the ability to, the cities are at the pleasure of run at the pleasure of the province. They can change whatever they want anytime they want. So it's possible.
Even
but
the Vancouver Charter, George.
Yep, they control that too. But yes, nightmare. That's okay. Who's the nightmare? Who's our day mayor for that matter?
Haven't been able to find him.
Just get me a mayor.
Busy, very busy, very busy. Don't have 10 minutes to talk to you about what I'm doing in the office and how too busy. We'll only do interviews with people who I know will be nice to me.
Oh, man,
that's what it feels like to me, because I'm not nice. Apparently, I'm like one of the nicest people in media, but I never get the mayor. Nope. Oh,
interesting.
I request them all the time.
Wow. I don't.
And when I'm oddly, I stopped asking because it was always no. And when I opened it up to say, let me know anytime in the next month, I'm here last summer, I was here all summer. Also, interestingly, the park board, which, going back to John Cooper, if he were as involved and engaged in the issues with the mayoral race as he has been over the years, I think maybe it's a confidence thing with the park board because he knows it so well. Prove that you know the city hall inner workings equally as such, because John has been very forward and in those scrums and having those conversations when it comes to park board, even when it was all kinds of heat, to the point where people are like, you love the NPA. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, you're
No.
always talking to John Cooper. I'm like, because everybody else says no on the park
Yep.
board. So I'm going to talk to the person that's going to talk about when we're taking the pylons out of Stanley Park.
Or at least
we'll leave it
put
on
them
that.
in proper places and put a proper bike lane. That, anyways, we talked about it last week. Don't get
We're
me
going to do
started
that.
on that.
We don't have time because you have to go on vacation. You have
Yes.
2 weeks off. So in the meantime, we're going to follow
This is
you
our longest hiatus ever.
Ever. In years.
But you know what? When we come back, we are going to be full in election mode, man. That's going to be mid-July. It's going to be go time. So we need a break so that we can really focus on not only Vancouver. I know we get a lot of requests to talk about Surrey. We'll be looking at other cities. What's going on. There's some interesting race in Langley. What about up north?
Abbotsford,
we got
Henry
viewers
Braun
and listeners
stepping down. Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on, and we're going to be covering it all for sure.
We might actually have to extend. We've always been the fastest 30 minutes in politics. bcpoli's 30 minutes. We might have to expand as we head towards October 15th, 2022, which is also George Affleck's birthday. You can find George on Twitter at George_Affleck, at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y. This is UnSpun Podcast. You can find us and subscribe to it. We don't sell your information. We don't share our list with anyone. We just want to make sure UnSpun lands in your inbox as soon as we've got a new episode. Thanks for tuning in as always. And George, safe travels.
See you in a couple weeks, everybody. Bye.
Peace.